was facing my case, this is back in 2010 for a felony drug charge. Basically, when One Love Torment, I heard about it, it was just like, damn, man, like these are brothers that I grew up with. Like, yeah, they make a mistake when they're juvenile, and they make that mistake, they serve their time. Came back out, gave to the community, became productive citizens, had families, but now, like, just because of their status, they can be deported. It's like, to me, I felt that in my heart was just like, this is wrong. This is like removing them from their family, How can America do that?
Deportation itself is a human rights concern because migration is a human right, and one should not be criminalized for moving freely.
The war in Southeast Asia that really impacted Cambodian secret bombing campaign in Cambodia really destabilized Cambodia, and that's how Cambodia fell into the communist regime, and that's the genocide took place.
A lot of Cambodians moved to the United States as a result of U.S. bombing expeditions. And in some ways, the acceptance of Cambodian refugees in the United States was a recognition of the role that the U.S. government had played.
For a long time in the immigration movement, there hasn't been any room to talk about or discuss anybody who has any convictions or contact with the criminal justice system, because the narrative in the immigrant rights movement for so long has been about the dreamer, like the dreamer immigrant who has like straight A's and gone to school and wants to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is, has been what the narrative of the immigrant rights movement has been for the last basically 15 years or 2 decades. We're going to be dealing with that narrative for the next 20 years, trying to unpack that shit.
We have a nation that has a broken immigration system, where the laws are in violation of basic human rights, where they have not changed with the times, where we are punishing people for crimes committed before laws were even enacted against them, and that we have to change that.
So we are in Washington State, particularly Seattle and Tacoma, for the Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders Beyond Bars, Beyond Borders convening.
This is a really huge and historical moment for people to be organizing with organizations, and then for the organizations to come together with deportation and issues of mass incarceration at the heart of what we're talking about. I think is huge and has never been done before.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no.
From the very beginning, Southeast Asians, always had to struggle and live under state violence. It was U.S. imperialism in our home countries, the bombings and the wars, and the instability that it created that actually caused us to come here in the first place. And then growing up in impoverished and in poor and in violent communities, it was a straight shot from schools to prisons, right? And then once we got to the prisons and got convicted, then we were served orders to then go back to the country where we fled from in the first place.
In 1996, in particular, there was a set of laws that got passed in the United States. And so what they did was criminalize the immigrant community in such a way that, you could be deported for any crime, whether it was shoplifting to murder and everything in between. Made deportation for any of those things considered an aggravated felony deportation, which meant that it was a permanent deportation with no hope of return to the United States ever.
In communities that are predominantly impacted by poverty, those are the communities who are most likely to be impacted by the 1996 immigration laws. It expanded the number of crimes or criminal offenses that one might be deported for, including things like possession of marijuana. And because these communities are more policed, they're more likely to be caught.
After that was when there were a lot more quote unquote criminal deportations out of the United States, and they were just rose dramatically in the last 20 years. Deportations have, more than quadrupled, right? The Right to Return campaign is like two things. It is us being able to change our understanding of what it means for us to find justice, which is not just about ending deportation, it's about bringing people back. So that, for a long time, the immigrant rights movement has used not one more as the rallying cry, which means not one more deportation from the United States, right? But Right to Return takes it to another place, which is that we don't just want not one more, we also want people to have the right to return. And then the other part is the strategy itself. The way that we do right to return for our community is by revising this repatriation agreement.
Deportation has become the one thing that I believe for my generation that we were never quite able to figure out. It's become the one sort of boogeyman in my generation that's always come back to haunt us. I think, for my generation, having a clear strategy, having a clear vision, and having clear purpose and plan to really figure out this deportation puzzle, I think we'll finally be able to make me feel okay and make me feel that we can finally be able to get some justice.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.